So that takes our total to 1,071, and there are now currently 4 active cases. Now, later on, the Deputy Premier will be giving an update on the pub in New South Wales, where we are now putting out a health alert, which is matching the New South Wales government about people who have visited that pub. But today we're very excited to be here with Professor Paul Young to talk about the developments now for the start of human clinical trials for a vaccine. This is once again Queensland and Australia leading the way. Queensland leading the way in that it's the first time that there will be clinical trials undertaken, but also too that there is a partner, and that partner is CSL. So that means that production of the vaccine can happen simultaneously at phase 3. This is excellent news. As I said yesterday, we have world-class scientists here in Queensland, and once again we are seeing the effects of that. We were very pleased back in March where we announced $10 million grant towards the development of this vaccine. $10 million, I think that has been very well spent. And in March, Professor Paul Young said to me that the clinical trials would be able to start in July, and he has kept his word. I want to thank UQ for once again showing that Queensland has the best of the best, that when it comes to developments, when it comes to setting the agenda, the work through UQ and its scientists is second to none. So this is a very exciting day today, and of course Professor Paul Young will now update us about the 120 volunteers. We put a call out and apparently 4,000 people wanted to register, but we've got 120 people that will undertake this, and I thank them for this. It's a very big step and a very exciting day for not just UQ but for Queensland. So I'll hand over to Professor Paul Young, and then of course the Deputy Premier will give us a further update. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Minister Miles, Deputy Premier, Minister Jones, our Vice-Chancellor, my Associate Paul Griffin from Nucleus Network, and my UQ colleagues who are here today. So thank you all for coming along today. Today we begin clinical trials of the UQ vaccine in, as the Premier said, 120 Queensland volunteers. I'd like to begin by pointing out that our efforts in getting to this milestone in quite a remarkable time frame has been the result of an amazing, committed team effort. So I'm here today representing the UQ team and all our colleagues in this endeavour. Our CEPI team, those at the Doherty Institute, the ANU and CSIRO, as well as our partners at CSL. But I wanted to particularly acknowledge my fellow UQ leadership team of Associate Professor Keith Chappell, Professor Trent Munro, Christina Henderson and Dr. Dan Waterson. So our studies so far have provided all the safety data and positive immune responses necessary for ethics approval for the trial to go forward, and that's why we're here today. This is the first in human, a randomised, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. There will also be dose escalation component to determine the optimal vaccine dose for future studies. So this phase 1 study will be assessing essentially vaccine safety and also immune responses to that vaccine. So 2 immunisations are going to be given to each of the participants 4 weeks apart, and we'll be measuring immune responses 4 weeks after each of those doses. So I'll be seeing some early data, just to give you a heads up, probably by the end of September. All participants will be monitored for a 12-month period after the first dosing. However, should safety be confirmed and early immune responses are promising, then our partner CSL will take the vaccine through further clinical trials from about sometime in the beginning of Q4 this year. So I was reflecting last night on where we all were at the start of this year. It seemed like about 3 years ago, but in fact it was only about 5 months ago. And a lot's happened since then. To see us at this stage of clinical testing, a mere 5 months after we selected our lead vaccine candidate to what was essentially a newly emerged global infectious disease threat, is simply remarkable. So in finishing, I would just like to thank all those who've provided unwavering support for our vaccine program, both within UQ, Team 1 UQ, and also externally. And I particularly want to thank our primary funders, CEPI, along with generous support that we received from the Queensland Government, from our federal government, foundations, and our many community donors. In the end, over 2,600 individuals contributed to the efforts to advance this vaccine. And as the Premier was saying, the approach we've taken is to advance manufacturing as fast as we can while we're doing these clinical studies. So whilst these studies are underway, we will still be working in the background along with our partner CSL to advance the manufacturing so we have this vaccine at scale when it's needed. Thanks very much.
Any questions for Professor Young?
I think we've got questions afterwards.
Okay, all right.
Shall we?
Sure. Well, this is a momentous day for Queensland. Queenslanders should be rightly very proud of our researchers and our scientists who are leading the world in the race to find a vaccine for COVID-19, a key piece of the puzzle so that we can start saving lives globally from this disease. As the Premier has outlined, we have one additional case here in Queensland overnight, a returning traveller from the United States. They were in hotel quarantine, normally resident of the Sunshine Coast, giving us 1,071 total cases. 4 that remain active. Yesterday, Victoria confirmed they now had 1,484 cases. Of course, we will await today's update on the situation in Victoria, but our greatest concern now relates to a pub just off the Hume Highway in New South Wales in a town called Casula, the Crossroads Hotel. I'm told it's a popular stopping point for people travelling the highway, especially truckies. Late yesterday afternoon, after receiving this information, the Department of Transport and Main Roads alerted truck driving networks that anyone who has been to the Crossroads Hotel between the 3rd and the 10th of July should go and get tested. Police are now asking anyone arriving at the borders whether they have been to the Crossroads Hotel between the 3rd and the 10th of July, and we'd appreciate your assistance, the media's assistance, in getting that alert out throughout Queensland. There is a large number of people who have been through that hotel on those dates where there are now confirmed cases of both staff and patrons being infectious during that period of time, the 3rd to the 10th of July. This is a very large contact tracing exercise, probably one of the largest undertaken so far here in Australia, in order to allow New South Wales to bring their contact tracers back that have been assisting in Victoria. Queensland is working through the details of providing additional contact tracers to Victoria to assist with their outbreaks. We all have an interest in ensuring that the contact tracing for the Crossroads Hotel is undertaken.
Well, it's wonderful to be here today to officially announce, as the Premier has said, clinical trials starting in humans here in Queensland. This is a major step forward in the backing of this UQ science that we know is leading the world when it comes to combating the coronavirus. To think that it is a Queensland University, Queensland people, Queensland brains that could crack the coronavirus pandemic. It's a real proud day for every single one of us. Like the Premier, I want to thank the more than 4,000 Queenslanders that put their hand up to be part of the clinical trial. It just shows that when times are tough, Queenslanders always put their hand up. So as the Premier said, over the next few months, 120 Queenslanders will be part of this clinical trial. This is a huge step forward in the advancement, and as you've heard from Professor Young, we are doing this in record time. We know that the best way to unite and recover as an economy is to crack the vaccine, and it's wonderful that Queensland is now leading the charge globally in tackling the coronavirus vaccine. I do want to acknowledge and thank everybody in the team. They are working 24 hours around the clock every single day to deliver this vaccine for the world, and it would be an amazing feat if we were able to be one of the vaccines developed globally right here in Queensland. I want to echo the Premier's comments and thanking everyone that has been involved to date. We were very proud to be one of the first partners to put $10 million on the table towards this. We know that if we can deliver a vaccine, then that will be the fastest and quickest way for us to move on from the coronavirus. And I want to acknowledge and thank everyone in the team that is working so hard to deliver this vaccine in record time. And Vice Chancellor? Peter?
I just want to say thank you for all of you backing what UQ is doing for the community that, in addition to government contributions, really dug deep to make sure that we can deliver this for Australia and the world in the fastest possible time. Thank you.
Okay, happy to take questions. Anyone? Well, you'd have to talk to New South Wales and Victoria about that, because we haven't had outbreaks here in Queensland to be using the COVID Safe app. So thankfully good news at the moment, but of course, as I've said, it's really important that everyone keeps up with the social distancing. Look, we've seen images over the last couple of days of people not social distancing. You are putting everyone's lives at risk if you don't do it. So please continue with the social distancing, keep up with the hand hygiene. We are all in this together. Everyone has a responsibility to do the right thing to keep everybody safe in our state.
What's being done to enforce social distancing at night?
Jack, my understanding there is that the police are very concerned about what's happening, and they are speaking to a number of nightclub operators over the course of the next couple of days.
What about the Victorians who are trying to sneak into Queensland?
Yeah, not good. We've made it very clear that unfortunately, not at this time, Victorians cannot come to Queensland. We saw some people trying to get in a van. It's not on, and you will be caught and you will be fined. So those young people now have hefty fines that they now have to pay.
In the nightclubs, are the COVID safe plans, are they strong enough, do you think? Are they effective enough to stop people from mingling?
Well, see, the nightclub industry put in a COVID safe plan, and that is the plan they put into the Chief Health Officer. And if they breach that plan, there will be consequences, and the police are really looking at that. Look, I know it's tough times, everyone, but we're all in this together, and we have to make sure that we keep up with the social distancing. And that means if you are lining up to go into a cafe, a bar, a restaurant or a nightclub, you have to keep your social distance. Look, we are very concerned. I'll be getting another briefing later on today from the Deputy Premier and the Chief Health Officer. And of course, I know that our Chief Health Officer is in constant contact with all the other Chief Health Officers around the country. So the best thing that people can do is, if they have been to that pub, to self-isolate and get tested. I mean, it is absolutely crucial that we don't miss people there. So we're happy to help the New South Wales Government with this, and of course I'll be getting briefed later on today as well.
If this vaccine is successful, what do you think it will do to Queensland health?
Look, this is just wonderful. We've seen, of course, Professor Ian Fraser with the discovery of the cervical vaccine, which is saving lives throughout the world. This is great news for Queensland and Australia, but what's really important is that it can be manufactured here at the same time as well. That is really important. That has always been the missing piece of Australia. We've always had to get overseas companies to do that production. It can be manufactured here locally and distributed globally. So that is another win for Queensland and Australia.
Do you have an estimated value for the production towards Queensland and Australia is going to develop in next year?
Well, of course, it'd be millions, if not billions. So one step at a time. We're at the clinical trials now, and I just want to thank the UQ team. The University of Queensland is a very distinguished university. I'm very proud alumni myself, but I can't be more proud today the fact that UQ has really stepped up in these times. And as Professor Paul Young said, a few months might seem like a few years, but we're all in this together, and Queensland once again leading the way. I think every Queenslander should be proud tonight.
There are other clinical trials underway around the country at the moment. What makes this one different, and what makes you want to back this one, other than it being a
Well, hang on. But first of all, it's in Queensland, and we'll always back Queensland. But like I said, it's the first one where you've got the clinical trial and the manufacture that can happen at the same time. So that's they've already got a partner in CSL. But I might get Professor Young to say some more words on that.
I think the Premier has just answered that question well, but it's the partnership with CSL, a manufacturer who can generate this vaccine at scale. So that's the important component, and that partnership was announced on June the 5th, so we're really excited about that.
So that fast track from development to being able to...
Correct, and in fact we're already working with CSL to actually advance that manufacturing, so we're doing that in parallel with the clinical trials. So that's what makes this one unique in Australia.
Any vaccine has what
All of the participants have been advised of the risks. I mean, in the context of the sort of vaccine that we're dealing with, it's a protein-only vaccine that has had a very safe transition in many of its guises in different vaccine targets before. So we're very confident that the safety issue is not a concern here. Like every vaccine trial, this may or may not succeed. It's not a guaranteed, but we're confident that we'll get through there to a positive outcome in the end. I think we're all watching each other. As I've said many times at these media conferences, we're not racing each other. We're all racing against the virus and trying to get there as quickly as possible. And as many people have mentioned before, this is a global pandemic, and we're going to need vaccines that can spread right across the globe to the billions of people on this planet. And the only way we can do that is with multiple vaccines. So we're hoping that a number get through to the end.
What sort of hours would you be putting in? Is it really around the clock?
Pretty much, and sort of shift working as well to ensure that we do this as quickly as we can.
How realistic is this end of year date that's been talked about the media this vaccine is ready by then? And how long from then will it be before people actually receive it at the end of the year?
I think in terms of when this vaccine is going to be available, that's always a question that we're asked, and to some degree that's a hard endpoint that we can't define. Our partner CSL will probably be a bit better placed to answer that question now, but the plan is that we're in place by the middle of next year.
For the vaccine to be finished?
Yeah.
And then before delivery, how long will it take?
That depends on the manufacturing, yeah. No, probably the middle of next year. So we have clinical trials that are beginning today and will progress all the way through to the beginning of next year. And it's depending on how those are going, there may be cases for emergency use of the vaccine delivered earlier, but in terms of large-scale rollout, middle of next year to end of next year. But again, that's a question for CSL. So the manufacturing is beginning now. The processes are being worked up now, and the idea was to uncouple. The normal process for vaccines is a pipeline of activity, and manufacture only begins when you get regulatory approval. What we and many others have done now is uncouple that manufacturing stage so we can bring it forward and begin the process now. So the idea is that there will be vaccine at scale when that regulatory approval is provided.
When would you expect the vaccine to be ready for emergency use as part of
Again, I'd be pulling dates out of the air, but we're hoping the beginning of next year we might be in a position to do that. Beginning of next year. Yeah, there have been a number of moments. The excitement of actually identifying a lead vaccine candidate, which was back in February the 14th, and then progressing that through all of the animal studies to show that it actually induces the right immune response. So there'll be multiple milestones, but this is a big one. Everyone is excited about the fact that we can now progress this through into clinical stage trials.
Premier, last question. You had the chance to read Peter Beattie's ideas to kickstart employment in Queensland. What did you make of them, and why did you feel the need to point out the
Look, we welcome everyone's ideas, but we have our own road to recovery where everyone is working on getting people back into work. Thanks. Thank you.